In this video, you asked for it, and here it is. I'll tell you about my favorite solo play miniatures games that I own. Last week, I made a video about two-player miniature game starter sets that I own that cost under $100. But chow, you should check it out. And in that video, I also asked if people wanted me to make a video about solo play miniatures games as well. I was pleasantly surprised by the number of people who posted in the comments that they'd like to see a new video about solo play games, because I made one years and years and years ago, but it's been a long time. So I dug out the ones that I own and also enjoy. There have been a few that I have owned that I didn't enjoy, but not any of these that I'll mention today. These I like. And now I'm going to tell you about them. Again, these are solo games that I own and have enjoyed playing. There are certainly more solo play games out there in the world that I don't own, but you might. So if you like different solo play miniatures games and think other people should know about them and whatnot, leave a comment below so other folks can learn about them as well. And again, it's best to just leave the name and the company in the comment that you post. If you put a web link into the comment, sometimes YouTube will suppress or remove the comment because they think it might be like spam or something like that. So just give us the name of the game and the company. Now remember, nearly every miniature game can be played solo if you believe in yourself. Sometimes you just want to learn how to play a game, because maybe you're curious, or maybe you'll be playing it soon with friends and you want to learn the rules ahead of time, or maybe you need to teach other people how to play, and so you need to really kind of tighten up how much you understand the game. I play solo in what are considered non-solo games all the time so that I can kind of learn the play loop in a new game, how turns work, all that kind of stuff, etc. It helps me to be able to speak about more games versus having to actually play against another person and get all that coordinated, right? You basically just end up playing both sides of the conflict, but it's usually not as satisfying and challenging as playing a game designed to be played solo. We're going to start with one of the first solo play games I ever really tried out and got into, Rangers of Shadowdeep by Joseph McCullough. You might recognize the author's name, as he's written several other miniatures games, Frostgrave, Stargrave, Oathmark, The Silver Bayonet, stuff that you may have heard of if you look outside of the Games Workshop bubble. This is my old school print-on-demand softcover version that I bought way back when he was first self-publishing it on Wargame Vault, before, the game got picked up and then published by Modiphius. It's miniatures agnostic, as all of the games in today's video are, so you can use whatever figures you like. You start by creating your Ranger of Shadowdeep, as it turns out. Basically your avatar on the table, right? And then you supply them with skills and weapons and equipment and all that kind of stuff. You can also have companions for your Ranger as well, like barbarians, conjurers, hounds, and all kinds of stuff. Once you have your team ready to go, right? And the models picked out to represent them, then it's time to start playing the missions, which each contain multiple scenarios. The missions will start by telling you what kind of enemy miniatures that you should have ready to go for this upcoming encounter and what kind of terrain. The game is designed to be played as a campaign, as most solo play games are. As you play through the campaign, things change from mission to mission for you and your companions, kind of like they do in role-playing games. You suffer injuries, you gain experience and money and new equipment, things like that. You play through the missions in order, and it kind of tells a story. I think, especially if you like fantasy games, that Rangers of Shadowdeep is a great jumping off point into the world of solo play games. And like most solo play games, you can play co-op as well. Generally, most solo play games, when you're playing, if you just play with two people, sometimes they tell you to double up the monsters or whatever, and then you're both working together, but you're both running your own Ranger and your own companions, that kind of stuff. It all kind of depends on the game, but this one can be played solo and co-op. Next is a series of solo play titles from Ivan Sorensen and Nordic Weasel Games. The games are generally kind of known as the 5X games, with titles like 5 Parsecs from Home, which is sci-fi, 5 Leagues from the Borderlands, which is fantasy, 5 Clicks, from the Zone, which is post-apocalyptic, stuff like that. And they all predominantly use the same sort of kind of game engine, if you will, the same kind of rule set, just with different settings and other little tweaks and things like that. I have only tried 5 Parsecs from Home and 5 Leagues from the Borderlands, both of which are now published in very nice new editions from Modiphius with fancy layout and great artwork. The other titles, not Parsecs or Borderlands, are still self-published via Nordic Weasel and available on Wargame Vault as PDFs only. Parsecs and Borderlands are also available as PDFs. That's how I have them. I don't have the printed versions. I just have them on my iPad. But they're also available as hardcover printed versions from Modiphius. These Modiphius versions are also the newest, most updated versions of the rules, and they include everything you need to start your ragtag crew and explore the cosmos, do some jobs and get into trouble, which is, Parsecs, or, start your warband of heroes, explore the world, do some quests and, get into trouble, which is, Borderlands. 5 Leagues from the Borderlands is a deeper game than 5 Parsecs from Home. To some degree, right? It's certainly more pages. It's like 50 pages more. But I feel that there's just more to do in Borderlands. Not to say that there's not enough to do in the Parsecs game. There's a ton of depth and replayability in the sci-fi title. But the fantasy title can go really, really deep if you want it to. Both games have pretty low model counts and are generally played on smaller boards, 3 foot by 3 foot or smaller, so they're great for people who don't have a whole bunch of hobby space. And you probably already have some sci-fi or fantasy miniatures and maybe even some suitable terrain. Now, we start getting a little bit weird, but still very fun. It all started with a great role-playing game called Mork Borg, which has amazing visual design, style, and writing. I don't know much about RPGs, so I don't know if the game engine, if it's a great game or not. I don't know if it's any good, but I've really enjoyed reading it and looking at it. But this isn't an RPG channel, right? It's a miniatures wargaming channel, so I'm going to tell you about a series of miniature games based off of the amazing ideas from Mork Borg: Forbidden Psalm, The Last War, and Kill Sample Process. I've played all 3 of these, and they're some of my favorites. These games, created by Kevin Rahman, are listed as being compatible with Mork Borg, so you could bring your character from the RPG over into the miniatures game if you wanted to. Now that said, you don't have to, and you don't even need to own Mork Borg or even be familiar with it at all. Forbidden Psalm and the others are all standalone games. I've talked about this series before and why I like them. Pachow, but they also fit great in this video because they're excellent solo play miniatures games as well. I own them all in hardcover, but I could only find this one. The other 2 are, I think I know where they are, but I didn't have time. But I also own them all in PDF as well from Wargame Vault, and you could do the same if you prefer. Forbidden Psalm is weird fantasy, quote, horror gaming at the end of the world, unquote. And again, you can use whatever fantasy models you'd like, and they encourage you to kit bash some weird stuff if you want to. The Last War is alternate history World War I. The Great War caused an apocalypse of sorts, and your warband is made up of some of the very few survivors. You kind of fight to exist in what's left, right? And then there's Kill Sample Process, which is a cyberpunk game where you and your crew try to kind of scrape out an existence in the massive neon hellscape of a city called Psy. All of these things, these titles can be played solo, but also co-op and versus mode as well if you'd like. Each of these titles pretty much uses the same game engine, again, like the 5 Parsecs games I talked about before, but it doesn't use that engine, it uses its own engine, and then each of the 3 titles, they all use the same engine, but they're a bit different from each other. Forbidden Psalm is the standard, and it's also the first one, right? So each standalone sequel adds more complexity to the rules based off of Forbidden Psalm. The Last War adds more, right? And then Kill Sample Process adds even more to The Last War, right? It's not a requirement that you start with learning Forbidden Psalm, but if you're looking for a good jumping off point and you haven't played games like this before, it might not be a bad idea to start with Forbidden Psalm. Plus, you probably already have some fantasy miniatures around somewhere, right? And then there's The Doomed, a rules-light skirmish war game by Chris McDowell and published in hardcover and PDF by Osprey Games. The subtitle is Apocalyptic Horror Hunting, and it's got kind of a weird sci-fi / horror / almost Dark Ages vibe to it. It's generally your small band of hunters trying to bring down a horror, one of dozens of big giant honkin' monsters that are available in the rules for your group to fight. There's also sometimes minions that follow these horrors around, and there's also the conflicts that are attached to these horrors. Between all of those different things, there's more than enough missions and things to play. When they say the game is rules light, they mean it. Most figures really only have one stat, quality. You know, they may also have some special abilities like tough or noble or precise, stuff like that. They also generally have a weapon as well, but that's pretty much about it. The game really isn't about crunch and competition and stuff like that. It's really about building a story. Again, it's designed to be played in a campaign, a series of linked games that you have a good time with and stuff like that. And since it's very rules light, you can usually play a game in an hour or less, which allows you to get through a campaign quicker if you want to, which can also be good when, time is precious. I really like the vibe of The Doomed. It's filled with amazing illustrations and great photos. It really inspires me to do more kit bashing and weird ruined terrain. The way that most of the photos and illustrations show characters that really predominantly look like medieval knights with swords and blasters really has made me start digging into my bits collection to kind of create some fun stuff. Give a bolter to a knight, things like that. I don't have anything to show you yet, except for this work in progress guy, but I will soon. There's a part of me that wants to try to find time to attempt maybe even battle reports of some sort from these games, and if I do, I might start with The Doomed first. Lastly, something that I'm very bad at, self-promotion. If you don't want to hear it, that's fine, I get it. Feel free to head to another video, and thanks for watching. Otherwise, there are a few other solo games available out there that I'm very familiar with, and they're made by me and the incredible Vince Venturella. We started a company back during the pandemic called Snarl Badger Studios, and we've produced 3 games that can be played solo: Space Station Zero, Majestic 13, and most recently, Death Wizards. Also, our first game, called Rain in Hell, can also be played solo, but it requires an add-on called the Oculus Sphere to do so. We've worked hard on the titles we've produced, and they each use different game engines. Then it's not the same game over and over again, it's different game engines for each different game, but they're all about campaign play and miniature agnostic gaming. If you're interested in our games, or any of the other games I've mentioned during this video, check out the links down below in the video's description. So again, these are games I currently have. What other solo games should I, and very probably the other video viewers out there, try out, in your opinion? Let us all know down in the comments below, and maybe I'll be able to make a video about some of those games as well. Hit like if you liked this type of video. It really does help out a good deal to get this video out to more people, and it helps the channel as well. If you'd like to even help the channel a little bit more and see more videos like this every single Friday, you can hit the subscribe button down there while you're down there as well. It's free. Thanks for watching.